Welcome everyone, my name's Travis Smith. I'm the Education Industry Lead for Microsoft Australia, and it's my great pleasure today to speak with Lyle Corvusy, who's the ICT Manager, and Pip Herman, who's the Head of Innovation and Enterprise for K-12 at St Andrew's Cathedral School in Sydney. Welcome.
Thank you.
So obviously this has been a fairly tumultuous year, and your school has gone through a fair bit of transformation in the last 12 or 18 months or so. So maybe I'll start with you, Lyle. Perhaps you could tell me a little bit about your role and a little bit about the school generally.
Sure. Look, we're a K-12 school right in the heart of Sydney CBD. We have around 1,300 students in the school in an office building or office buildings. So we are quite different and unique in that respect, right down to the AstroTurf roof for the playground. Think of stairwells filled with kids, lifts that are just chock-a-block between lessons. It's chaotic. It's densely populated, which has all of its own challenges. There's some advantages there. Obviously, being densely populated means it's a fair bit easier for infrastructure and so on, but it's a city school. We are a true city school in a city landscape.
Excellent. And so you made a shift recently in terms of your technology from sort of a BYOD program to more what we might describe as a managed kind of one-to-one program. When did you make that shift, Lyle?
The shift was at the start of this year, but look, there was a fair bit of history before that in ramping up to that shift. So we came from a bring your own, we call it a bring your own device, but it was bring your own iPad effectively. So we've come from an iPad background, which we ran for 5 years. I believe it was about 5 odd years on that platform. And we just got to the end of the road with that. We wanted some more flexibility, and so we migrated over at the start of this year, thankfully.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. What sort of things did you think that the Surface devices that you've gone with now offered you that the iPads, for example, didn't?
There's a lot of reasons there. Primarily, I think the annotation was a big draw card for us. The use of pen and a good pen. I know that that's been tackled now in many areas with the others, but look, that was a definite draw card. But really, it was about teaching the students how to use a computer, a real machine, getting them familiarised with an actual file system, having access to a file system. That was a real issue with iPads for us. We seem to be leveraging third-party apps a lot with the iPads, which was okay, but you lose out on that cohesive environment, where everything just really talks to each other and offering that. So a lot of it was the reasoning. I think the management was an issue for us. Management was a really difficult thing for us in the IT department and for the school in general. Those devices for us were student owned. So the students paid for the device themselves. They brought them in. We then had to manage them and make the best of it. It's difficult in that environment to restrict devices because they take them home and they own them. There were a lot of reasons. They were the main reasons for us.
Obviously, the management of those devices is important, especially when you're trying to manage, security and infrastructure and everything else that you're trying to manage within a school. So how did you do that? What kind of technology did you use to do that sort of device management, I suppose, with the Surfaces?
With the Surfaces, we used Intune, and look, it's been a great experience. We came from, a few of the guys have been here for a while, so we've had a lot of experience in terms of SCCM and other areas. But this is the first real deployment we've done through Intune and the real cloud managed service. It's been really good.
And obviously that management is really important. And so tell me a little bit about you used Autopilot at the school to sort of set the devices up before they get in the hands of students. Can you tell me a little bit about that process and how it worked for you at your school?
Early on in the process, we decided to bring in some support. We leveraged a company called CNS Australia. They helped us with the rollout from top to tail, really. So that included you know, the unboxing, the setup, the whole process there. But I guess for us, the enrolment was really important, and the students on day one of term came to school, picked up a device and turned it on. Everything was installed, everything was ready to go. It was easily the best result that we've ever had in any rollout. What we found with other devices was, you know, day one was chaotic. There were people running around trying to install apps. Network was smashed. Wireless was struggling. You know, we were holding back on some apps, trying to tell people to do it at home. We didn't have any of that experience this time around. The experience was seamless. Our staff said it was the best that they've ever been through. That was unanimous that we found. It was amazing from my perspective after being through this many years. I've done this a lot of times. This was easily the smoothest run through we've had. I think the key to that was the leveraging of preloading apps and so on onto devices, and having devices set up for students before they came to school. And the autopilot functionality really helped with that. And it helps, you know, Intune helps us move forward whenever we want to make changes to devices, whenever we want to roll out incremental security changes or updates, or, you know, restrict certain things. We can do that at a real granular level now. Intune gives us there's a lot of information, there's a lot of options for what we can lock down, what we can restrict in those areas for the kids, and Intune made a massive difference there for us.
Interesting. So thanks very much, Lyle, for that description. Was there any of it about the Intune or the autopilot part that, you know, just trying to help other schools, you know, did it exceed your expectations in terms of what you thought the technology was going to be able to do for you and help you, or was it sort of a bit harder or easier than you thought?
Look, like anything, you know, it's a shift for IT guys to really think that when you're in-house and you're doing everything, leveraging other Microsoft services like SECM, or, you know, on other devices we used other products, third-party vendors and stuff. So it was a lot to release that, you know, and feel like you're kind of letting go of the wheel and you're letting some cloud service just deploy devices. I mean, that's a scary prospect. I think for a lot of IT guys, you kind of think, well, how good could this possibly be? And yeah, look, it exceeded my expectations. I was pleasantly surprised. I did have doubts, as all of us did, but it by far exceeded them. I think it's been a very reliable solution for us.
Oh, good. That's a good story. And Pip, switching to you now, you're Head of Innovation and Enterprise for K-12. Can you tell me a little bit about what that role means at the school?
Yeah, so part of my role is to do ICT skills training with all of the students from K to 12. So the big thing this year has been the rollout of the new devices and making sure that the students can go from a Mac environment to a Windows environment and from a tablet to a laptop. So we've done that for all students years 3 to 10, so that was quite a lot of training in-house, like in the classroom with the students. I also get to run all of the fun Digitech co-curricula, so robotics and coding club and girls in tech, things like that, which is pretty fun. And then the other part of that is to do with enterprise skills, so teaching the students to use innovation, to think creatively about new solutions for the world around them.
Yeah, right, great. Sounds like a great role. And so obviously, as many schools have done this year, the shift to remote learning for a brief period of time for you was a large shift. What sort of guidance did you give to students or teachers at the school around how they might tackle that remote learning environment?
Yeah, so we were actually really fortunate that our executives started thinking about this very early on. And so we had a really good process in place where we did a lot of training and a lot of trial days. So we had developed some ideas and policies. Then we had a day where we sent all of Year 9 home and teachers had to teach remotely with the tools we were planning on using. Then we could review that. We had lots of staff training, lots of meetings with the students in year groups and down in the junior school class by class, teaching them how to use the tools that we were definitely going to use during remote learning, which was mostly OneNote, Teams and Schoology.
Yeah, okay, great. Both teachers and students at your school have a device with, you know, touch and pen and a Windows sort of operating system. So is there benefits to having consistency in what the students are using and what the teachers are using?
Absolutely. So that's only happened this year, as we've said, and it's been such a big change for the teachers and the students because as a teacher, I'm more confident that I know what device the student is using and I can help them with their device. And the way that OneNote works on my laptop, it's going to work the same for the student as well, whereas previously it would work very differently and I couldn't really have confidence in it.
And you've mentioned OneNote a couple of times, so presumably the role of the pen or stylus in the work that you're doing at the school is really important for probably both teaching and student learning. So can you just elaborate a little bit on, how the stylus is used, in what kind of classes, and whether or not there was any training or upskilling associated with that?
Yeah, for sure. So at the start of this year with the students, we did train them. During the rollout, we actually managed to get the half of the day cancelled from classes, and we did a rollout of laptop devices, training them how to use them, and using the stylus was a big part of that, teaching them how to access the different buttons, the shortcuts, and how to access all of the tools within OneNote. So we use OneNote quite a lot in a variety of subjects, specifically music, Chinese, and maths are really helpful to have that stylus because you couldn't really use the laptops effectively without the stylus in those subjects. And so for the teachers as well, we've implemented Vivi in the classroom. So with the stylus and Vivi, it allows us to write on the laptop rather than writing on the whiteboard. And so that way our notes are automatically saved. They're there all the time. We don't have to take photos and put them up for the students at a later date. So it's really beneficial for both the students and for us.
Yeah, interesting. That wireless presentation and teachers being able to walk around the classroom while teaching must be a big benefit for them, I assume.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you've also mentioned that you used Microsoft Teams, and you were lucky enough that you started that implementation, and those trial days you mentioned before were a great help when you had to go to remote learning. But so in terms of the Microsoft Teams platform, are you using that for both, organisation of staff and faculty things as well as in classroom settings? How's that sort of structured?
So we've been using Microsoft Teams for about 2 years, I think, within faculties, and it's just this year has been really good because it's really cemented the processes that we have, and I think it's really effective communication that we now have, and we're able to have a lot of meetings where you don't have to physically be there, which is fantastic as well. For students, we are using it to communicate with students, but we haven't set up class teams.
Okay.
And that's actually been really useful. Our specialised learning department has found a really big benefit in having the students on Teams because they've noticed a big increase in request for help from the students when they might not feel like coming, and an email is a little bit, too much for them to send. They'll just send a quick message via Teams. So that's been really helpful, actually.
And I have to add to that, based on what Pip just said, it does offer an option for students to communicate without having to walk up to a teacher in front of a class. Kids can often feel reluctant to do that because, they're put on the spot, and the option to just open up Teams, send a quick message to a teacher to say, look, I'm really struggling. Can I get some assistance is of huge benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really positive to hear because, students will often go without rather than stand out. They don't really want to have it acknowledged that they're asking for some help, whether that's in terms of learning or whether it's for pastoral needs. So it's interesting that you're on that journey. And so Pip, in terms of, you just touched on a few ideas there about the learnings from that remote learning period and what you might take forward around meetings and some other bits and pieces. Can you think of any other, practices or developments that happened during that tumultuous time that you will take forward and it will change the way that you operate in the school?
Yeah, so our junior school in particular, our junior school staff and students, they, I think, had the biggest change to make this year, and they have seen the most growth, I guess, in their use of technology. And I think for them, from what I've been hearing from lots of teachers down there, is that they will definitely be moving ahead using OneNote in the classroom as they go forwards. And a lot of them had never had an opportunity to really explore with OneNote before. So that's been a big change. The students have really had to become familiar with sharing files and documents saved on OneDrive with each other, right down in the junior school as well. So again, that's a process that's now part of our everyday. So students will be used to that and will carry that through. I think one of the other things is just an acknowledgement or an understanding that we can do things differently to the norm. So we've been for a long time moving away from, traditional pen and paper teaching, especially with the IB middle years program. We don't do very much of that, but I think this has really let people see that there's a lot more that we can do on the computers for learning. So there's different opportunities, even with watching a video with questions in it, so the students can just go at a bit more self-paced sometimes. So I think that it has moved us, I'd say, 3 to 5 years along our technology journey in the space of 9 months.
Yeah.
Excellent. And in terms of going back to maybe Lyle, in terms of the evaluation of technology, devices that you went through, obviously you're making a significant shift away from the iPads to a Windows device, and then there are many Windows devices. So how did you do that process, and what was it that eventually made you settle on a Surface?
Yeah, so look, we sat down, we've got an IT governance committee, and we sat down as a committee and we really ascertained what was important for us in feature set out of a device. So annotation, lightweight, battery capacity, quality of device really came into it. So we wanted a device that was going to last. It had to be rugged and it had to have the support, because children aren't very good with devices. Some can be a little bit clumsy. We've got concrete stairs and a lot of them. So they can take tumbles, they can go down those stairs. So we just sat down, we worked out a bit of a list. We then isolated probably, I think it was about 5-6 machines, which we then went out, touched base with vendors. We got demos, we brought them all in, we all had trials. We narrowed it down to kind of the top 3 devices. We then did trials of 20 odd devices with a bunch of students, actual students in the school, took those devices out into the wild, you could say, and they tested them. And then we took feedback, and we had a pretty rigorous set of questions that they had to answer. There was daily feedback from students about what they thought about the devices. So we had some really good kids there, some really good kids that told us some really good information about issues they were having and so on. So that really whittled down devices quickly. And we found ourselves kind of tossing up between 2 devices. One of those was the Surface. I think ultimately for us, the Surface took the first place because of the support base that was coming with it. We felt confident that we had the good support. I think the accidental damage protection that's optional on this gear is invaluable. That we've leveraged that already a lot, and it's been great. And we have devices in cases, so it's not like they're out there bare. And even in the case, they still get a hard life. So that's really how we wound up with the Surface for us.
Yeah, great. And so thinking about your whole technology rollout, and in the spirit of sharing, is there something that you've learnt along the journey that you thought, I wish someone had told me that before I started this, or any sort of tips or advice that you might pass on to a school who's currently looking to reinvent their technology experience in the way that you have?
Probably, I would say that there's definitely a fine line between, limiting a device's capabilities in terms of securitizing it. You can go too far, and you can, neuter a device to a point where the kids don't want to use it. So it is finding a balance there, and giving them the opportunity to run with a device and be responsible with it. And I think that's important to start with, to come into it thinking about, what do you really need to lock down? What is safety and what is just going too far? And I guess losing a lot of the sheen off the device. I think getting the kids excited about the change is important. I think that's really important. Our kids were really excited about getting new technology. Kids love new tech. They love it. So I think harnessing that and using that for the change as a benefit is really important, and critical to the successful deployment of and change of a device. Have you got anything else?
Yeah, I think one thing that was really important is we were training our staff for a good 12 months before the rollout. So they knew that the students were going to change, and they knew that they had to become more comfortable with their own laptop and with using their own stylus. So that was a big thing. And I think, like Lyle said, getting the students involved in the trial process was so important because they were excited and they were telling their friends about it. And then at the start of this year, when we rolled out the devices to all students, those who were involved in the trial became our experts and they were helping everyone out. So that was really helpful as well.
The last thing I wanted to finish with was basically a what's next question. You know, not that you need more work. You've done a fair bit of change in the last 12 to 18 months, or a little bit longer in terms of preparing for this change. But, you know, is there anything that you can think of from either the technology side or the teaching and learning side that you might be thinking, oh, you know, we're looking to forge down the path of analytics projects, or where, you know, what are the big things that you've got in your mind that if you had some time you might focus your attention on?
Yeah, look, analytics is a big. We're already well on the path for analytics in the school. We're utilising Power BI for that, so we're already doing a lot in the analytics space. I think that really is just will continue. The analytics space is just changing so rapidly that, you know, that's just going to be part and parcel with operating a school, I feel, these days. For us, I think in terms of the surfaces and devices, you know, we are migrating more devices. We're now looking at what we can do in that space and leveraging more powerful devices for kids that really want to do, you know, your heavy set digital arts, that sort of video edit space. And so what we're looking at now is potentially Surface Books in that area for those kids. That's mainly senior students that need a bit more of a gruntier machine. So at the moment we're looking at that and we'll see where we go, but that's really important for us.
And Pip, what about from the teaching and learning side? You've spoken a bit about the use of the Surface Pen in the classroom with the students. That's obviously been a big shift, and getting students to, you know, annotate and diagram in those subjects you spoke about is really important. What do you think might be part of the next bit of the journey for you?
So one thing that we're keen to do at the start of next year is a bit more of a consistent approach to how OneNote is used. And as a school, we've been working really hard to make our learning intentions and success criteria clear for students for every lesson in every subject. And I think then putting that into OneNote and making sure that that's, you know, not just written up on the board or whatever, those sort of things are, I guess, maybe the way we're heading there. Also, a lot of teachers are starting to think, well, how can we use the laptops even more effectively for learning? So, for example, using Grok and some of the coding activities in subjects that aren't technology, so in maths and science in the Year 7 and 8 classes, for example. So I think that's, again, somewhere where we're trying to head next year.
Excellent. Well, Lyle and Pip, thank you so much for your time today. It's an amazing journey that you've been on. You've both sort of led significant change at St Andrew's Cathedral School, and it's awesome work both on the technology side in terms of the way that you're, you know, securing and managing your devices and managing that device change and the whole platform, Lyle. And from the teaching and learning side, Pip, it sounds like there's great momentum and great support for teachers and students in the use of this kind of technology in the classroom. So many people don't understand the scale and complexity of delivering transformations like this in a school environment, because they are very large environments and complex environments. And hopefully, as a result of watching this chat with you today, there'll be some people who are, you know, inspired to get started or be guided along the way, or maybe reflect really positively on their own transformation as a result of hearing your story. So thanks very much for sharing, and I look forward to chatting to you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.